Welcome back to Los Angeles, California. Today we're going to be talking about legendary musician and former Beatle George Harrison. Now, George Harrison was one of the best guitarists of his generation and of our generation. Now, today what we're going to do is I'm going to tell you a little bit about his final days, and we're going to drive down to the location where George Harrison lived his final days. So let's go. In 1997, George Harrison was diagnosed with throat cancer and he was treated, and he blamed years of smoking for his illness. Then in May of 2001, Harrison had surgery to remove a cancerous growth on one of his lungs, and then in July of the same year it was reported that he was being treated for a brain tumor at a clinic in Switzerland. Now, supposedly Ringo Starr visited him there, but he had to come back to the US where his daughter was undergoing emergency surgery, and George was really weak and he asked him if he wanted to go with him. So that tells you a little bit about George Harrison's character. He was a pretty good guy from all accounts. Now, for being one of the most famous people on the planet, he tried to live as private of a life as he could and didn't seem to fully enjoy his fame. Now, in November of 2001, he started getting treatment at Staten Island University Hospital in New York for non-small cell lung cancer that had spread to his brain. He was using the name Arius to avoid being detected by the press, but a doctor eventually blew his cover. At this point, Harrison got in touch with noted security guy Gavin de Becker, who planned his strategy and a secretive funeral. Now, George decided not to return to his home in the UK and also refused to die in a hospital. Now, I'll put in here the final photo ever taken of George Harrison, and I'm not exactly sure where this photo was taken, but at the time there was a home in Beverly Hills that was offered to him by none other than former Beatle Paul McCartney. Now, some people reported Paul McCartney owned the house, others reported that he just rented the house. Personally, I think he was renting the house. But in any sense, George made it to Los Angeles and stopped at UCLA Medical Center for pain management drugs and then departed to McCartney's home. Now, George reportedly drifted in and out of consciousness for 36 hours with his wife and son at his side. The only outside person allowed in the room was George's friend Ravi Shankar, who played music on his sitar for George. Now, this is the location right here where George was at the time of his passing. This was the home that was rented by Paul McCartney, and this is the home where ultimately George Harrison spent his final days and passed away. Now, he passed away here at 1:20 p.m. on November 29th of 2001 at the age of 58 years old, and it was only 20 minutes after his passing that workers from Hollywood Forever Cemetery drove up this driveway right here to pick up George, and he was cremated within 10 hours of his death. Now, his remains were taken to India, and he was scattered over the Ganges River. Now, since we can't see what it looks like from the gate, this is what the house looks like. This is an aerial shot off Google Images. You can't see any of it from the street because it's set back quite a ways. Now, here's one more interesting thing to note. This is George Harrison's death certificate, and it is public record. Now, the death certificate was released, and they had put a fake address on it showing 1971 Coldwater Canyon in Beverly Hills. Now, 1971 Coldwater Canyon does not exist. That is not a real house. It's never been a real house. Now, it was later admitted that this address was made up just so that this house would not become kind of like a grim tourist spot, because it was at the time rented by Paul McCartney. I don't believe it is anymore, but just because of that, I will not disclose the location, but it is easy enough to find out if you really want to do so. But in some weird way, it's nice to honor history and the legacy of George Harrison. Although this was kind of a tragic location, it is one to be remembered. Now, I have gotten many requests for this and people asking where George Harrison is buried. I did briefly touch on it before, but George Harrison was cremated at Hollywood Forever Crematorium, and his ashes were spread over the Ganges River, so there is no place to visit if you want to go and pay your respects to George Harrison. Now, this is a view not too far away from that George Harrison house, but you have to show this at night because this is just a beautiful, beautiful view. But there will be a lot more coming from Los Angeles, but that's all for today. So thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great day.